Usually I am brought in to be the bridge. So in
Mm,
most rooms, the conversation is HubSpot versus Salesforce, right? My company is the and in that equation. So HubSpot and
uh,
Salesforce, not HubSpot versus Salesforce.
This is the Built Happily podcast, where we dive into building apps, companies, and relationships in the HubSpot ecosystem.
As HubSpot grows, so does the opportunity, and we put you in the room with the people making it all happen.
On today's episode of Built Happily, we're talking with Lauren Ryan, co-founder and CEO of Coastal Consulting.
Lauren shares with us her story on how she built a successful HubSpot solutions partner business focusing on the HubSpot to Salesforce integration. She also talks about the importance of sharing educational content and engaging with the HubSpot community and what sort of impact that had on her journey. All that and more on this episode of the Built Happily podcast.
Maxwell, it's another beautiful day. Welcome to the Built Happily podcast. I'm Dax. That's Max. And we have a
Hi.
special guest today that does the damn thing. And I'm trying to
Yes.
hear a lot about that.
Yes. Lauren, how are you doing today?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm much better now that we're finally hanging out and having this conversation. Lauren, before we kind of get started, we've got obviously a ton we want to talk about. Can you just take a minute, tell the people who you are and what you do and where you do it?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Lauren Ryan. I'm the founder of Coastal Consulting. We've been in business for about 3 years. We are currently a gold HubSpot partner. We have at one point been a diamond HubSpot partner, but that changes here and then. So we specialize in the HubSpot-Salesforce integration, and my team has fluctuated throughout the years. But as of right now, it's just me and my sister, Sarah. And we target companies that are using HubSpot and Salesforce and help them make sense of both of them and use the integration to the best of their capabilities.
Awesome. So something that
Already
people,
with Max, I already see this. I see Salesforce HubSpot. Let's talk about the fight.
Yeah.
Like, why are there? First of all, it's not, we're not advocating for violence. We're advocating for
No.
smiles and growth. So you're
No.
really focused on building this hub between Salesforce and HubSpot. So which came first, the chicken or the egg?
So for me, in my first job where I was exposed to both was both. So I started my first company using HubSpot and Salesforce together for CRM and marketing. So when I started my marketing career, this was what I knew from the start. And so I've kind of navigated at different companies using the different tools and switched to Marketo sometimes, Marketing Cloud at some companies, unfortunately. But I keep coming back to HubSpot, and I've always recommended HubSpot because it's the easiest to use on the market, and I also think it's the most feature rich. But my roots are in figuring out how HubSpot and Salesforce work together. So now I've built a company to help teams do it much faster and really take out the learning curve that I spent so much time building myself.
Yeah. So I want to dig into that. So I think there's like this really interesting conversation that is probably
Sure.
going on with existing partners looking to, carve out a more defined space in the partner universe, or even new HubSpot partners kind of figuring out like where they want to kind of comfortably sit in terms of like their niche. And something really interesting that I've been seeing is HubSpot partners that say, we are the HubSpot partner that specializes in X, right? So like we specializing in a specific industry, right? Like we have a happily partner called HubGem, which specializes in education. Right? And like they firmly like to say, we are the HubSpot experts in this space. Now, you have carved out this reputation and successful HubSpot agency being very, very specialized in specifically helping customers that are using HubSpot and Salesforce exclusively, right? So like you're saying, hey, if you're using the HubSpot to Salesforce integration, this is where we come in and kind of shine as a partner. What I'm wondering is how are things today being a HubSpot partner agency that like really focuses in on that like specific specialization that you're known for? What's good about that? What's really tough about that? And you can kind of wax poetic on either end as much as you want.
I think first I'm going to give a bit of my philosophy. So I think that there's two different approaches to being a HubSpot partner. I think there's a lifestyle business, and I think there is to the moon. And I think there are some HubSpot partner agencies that want to come in and grow and really take a huge piece of the HubSpot market share as far as being HubSpot agencies. And then there are people who fall into my category who just want to own their job and have a niche specialty where they are the go-to person and they just don't want to work for somebody else. And so for me, I fall into that second category. So the advice that I have wouldn't necessarily apply to the moon people, because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to grow a 70-person agency, and I'm not trying to. And I
Yeah.
never have. Even
Yep.
when I started Coastal Consulting, I said like the max amount of team members I ever want is 15.
Hmm.
So I think our highest was 16 members, and now it's just the two of us because I found that I have the best life whenever
Yeah.
it's just me and my sister.
Sure.
And it's a better manageable workflow. It's all of that. So all of that to say, setting the framework for which camp I'm in.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that at either size, you can set your niche. Even if you're huge or if you're small, I think that you could have a massive agency specializing in what I do. It's just not going to be me.
Hmm.
But something that has been, I think, more and more important is finding a niche and figuring out who your people are and really targeting that. And
Yeah.
by targeting, I don't just mean like ad filters, but making your whole company for that person. And so I have built Coastal Consulting to be the resource that I needed 10 years ago when I started my career. I needed the blog posts that we produce today. I need the community that I'm building right now. I needed the course that I created 2 years ago. I needed this information to succeed in my role as a trade show analyst to be able to
Yep.
connect my sales and marketing teams. And I didn't have those resources, and they frankly weren't there, and they still aren't there except for the stuff that I put out. So for me, being a really niche market makes it super easy for customers to decide if I'm the right choice or not.
Yeah.
If you're
Gotcha.
not using HubSpot and Salesforce, you don't work with Coastal Consulting. It's
Yeah.
really
It
simple.
just makes it easy to know who you are, right? Know who you are, know who you're working with. You got the problems, you got the technique of that specific integration. And what's interesting is, people fall into that as a partner. They're looking to get, oh, I keep getting the same business, and you can get really good at it. Just get your 10,000 hours of the same thing. And it makes a lot of sense, especially like the lifestyle decision that you're able to do when you're able to make those decisions, not have to worry about so many other folks. I totally get it. It's really interesting when you're dealing with that. So did you kind of find your first clients? Salesforce and they're not small. If they have Salesforce and HubSpot, I would imagine they're up some size. So where'd you get those first two clicks?
So I started, let's back up a second as to like where this all began. So I started Coastal Consulting on a whim.
Mm.
I was on leave for medical issues, and there was something that happened at my job that I just couldn't stand for. And so I actually resigned while I was on leave and just decided not to go back to work. And I was like, I'm just going to start a business and I'm just going to do my own thing. I can't do this anymore. So, not the best business plan, but I've made it work. But I was a freelancer long before I was an agency, quote unquote, owner. So, I freelanced for about 2 years before I started Coastal Consulting through Upwork and Facebook communities, just saying, hey, I can help you figure this out. And I got scrappy during that time, and I worked with all CRMs and marketing automation tools. So, I did everything. If you name it, I've worked in it because during that time I was testing my specialty to say, is this really where I want to be? Is HubSpot really where I belong? Is this a tool I want to specialize in? There's so many on the market. Is this where I want to be? And during that time, I definitively figured out, yes, HubSpot is where I want to put like the basket I want to put all my eggs in. So in doing that, my specialty is making them work well together. So I advocate for the HubSpot ecosystem by allowing Salesforce CRM using marketers to actually market effectively using the best marketing tool in the market, right?
Yep.
Because the least helpful answer to someone struggling with an integration problem is, oh, just use HubSpot entirely. When
Yeah.
the marketer doesn't have the decision making power to do that, the business isn't going to leave Salesforce for one reason or another. So that's not helpful. And I'm
Yeah.
there for that person.
I'm guilty of that. I'm definitely guilty of being the person. Well, why don't you just use CRM as if that's, just an easy thing to switch
Yeah, just
off
flip
of.
it on, put a workflow in.
Oh, everything will be fine.
It makes a lot of sense, right? You have to learn a lot and you have to really understand, the pieces, the tidbits, and then you're getting kind of like a partial. I bet you that was probably difficult because when you work with bigger companies or have these big factions to the point where they have two factions of CRM, HubSpot and Salesforce, like that communication jump of trying to get something done because you're relying on the ownership of multiple people. How do you navigate, shameless plug some later, how do you navigate that kind of methodology, right? Of how do you jump across chasms from your clients when there's internal, internal gaps themselves?
Usually I am brought in to be the bridge. So in
Mm.
most rooms, in most conversations, the conversation is HubSpot versus Salesforce, right? They're pit against one another. And so my company is the and in that equation. So HubSpot and
Oh.
Salesforce, not HubSpot versus Salesforce. So whenever I'm brought into a company, it's because I understand the middle ground. And so usually there's a marketing team that has deep HubSpot expertise and a Salesforce admin that knows Salesforce or an outsourced Salesforce firm. And they're like, we are butting heads. We cannot find common ground. We need you to help translate. And so I'm brought into the conversation to help translate. This is what's happening. This is why this is happening in this system versus this one, whatever. Here's a problem. And we kind of put the problem on the table. And then knowing what HubSpot and Salesforce can do within their package or their license, we then attack the problem. And they can't do that effectively without having someone in the room that knows the capabilities of both tools. So if you think about if you have a Pardot expert and a HubSpot expert in a room and you're talking about the best way to send an email, you're going to get very different answers and both of them are going to double down on their solution, right? Because they only know one. So having someone else in the room to be able to present either side is really where I'm brought into teams. And I'm the bridge.
I love that. Is it so? You were getting into the story of kind of how you were starting this. When you were doing it, were you starting with, I'm going to do Salesforce plus HubSpot and that is going to be it? Or is that something like you realized over time that you were really successful with? Like, where did I'm going to specialize in Salesforce and HubSpot fully lock into place, that decision?
So when I first started the company, the slogan was actually marketing automation rehab.
Okay.
And it was not button Salesforce. And our whole website was kind of built in the framework of a rehab facility. And I realized that wasn't a good idea.
I couldn't about a correct action. Like, oh man, is it like first star rehab or is it just got you? That's me.
Yeah, no, it was like, it alluded to like addiction. It was really bad. It was in really bad taste. And I didn't realize that. I was like, oh, it's like sarcastic and offhand humor. But people who Google for marketing automation agencies aren't like looking for that. So it took me about a month of that to figure out where I really landed. And I kind of talked to my highest paying clients and I looked at them and what they needed was interpreting HubSpot and Salesforce and making that work together. So it's what I was doing. It's just not like the kitschy framework that I put it in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was about 2 months in, I moved off of whatever I was using for my website. It was one of those, I think Wix maybe, and then moved on to HubSpot CMS, built my actual website that's about normal things. Then it took me about a year to completely revamp it to the site it is today, which I love. But yeah, it started in a strange place and got there in about 2 months.
That's awesome.
So, Build Happily is all about how are you building these things? And a lot of the biggest building kind of concepts we really talk about is building relationships. I want to double tap into you saying you work with your sister every day, all the time.
Yep.
I'm not going to insinuate anything here, but there's when you have 14 people, we have a lot of people and it's different. But if you have that connection, I'm thinking of how powerful that is to be able to hone in on something special with someone special. So how do you manage that kind of day to day? You have all these clients, it's just you two. What do you use to manage it? How do you manage all of these things? What's the personal tech stack in the house? And how do you guys collaborate?
We'll start with the tech stack. So we use Slack, we use Asana and G Suite. But I think that something that's been really nice is that Sarah actually worked with me whenever I was a freelancer before I started Coastal Consulting. She's not my youngest sister. She's my second youngest sister. I have 5. So she started working for me when she was actually in high school just to help me with those data cleanup projects. Here's an Excel sheet. I need you to do this and this. And so she'd spend her time doing that. And then over the years, she's actually grown with me through Coastal. And so it's been really cool to be like the job that she's gotten to be introduced to the career world with while she's gone to college and done all that. So it's been such a cool big sister learning experience. But then also there's very few people that know me as well as she does. So it's been helpful to have that counterpoint of, no, you're super off the rails, or, hey, you should get some sleep, or whatever from a personal perspective. So it's been really nice to have that blend in a person who works with me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I want to go into this for a minute because what I'm noticing, Dax, is there's things that are tying a lot of our episodes together in these very interesting ways. For example, Lauren, you mentioned you did some work on Upwork. Chris, who we just talked to over at Workflow, totally came up on Upwork, right? You also mentioned that you're working this business with your family, right? We're going to be talking to George B. Thomas in a couple of weeks, who has literally built an agency with like his kids and his wife, right? It's super interesting is like I run our partner program over here at HubSpot. I meet more and more partners that it's like a family business, right? It's like a husband and a wife team, partners, like whatever it may be. And, it's funny, like I've talked to Crystal, my wife, a couple of times, be like, hey, just so you know, like there's a lot of like husband and wife teams, like partner agency. Like it might be something we could do if you ever get sick of being a teacher, right? Which she complains about a lot. I think what's interesting here, don't worry, Dax, not going anywhere. What's interesting here is what I think this would be relevant to people listening and thinking about building this or thinking about building something with your family or going into business. What sort of advice do you have for folks that, and maybe this is like a super specific question, I don't know, that are thinking about building a HubSpot partner agency with a family member or working with family members or hiring family members? Is there anything like interesting about the dynamic you think, lessons learned, anything like that you would pass on to other folks, like finding themselves in similar situations?
I think that setting really clear boundaries is important. This is a family holiday, so we're not covering this here. We're not going
Yeah,
to talk about this here. Or I like to delineate text messages versus Slack conversations. I've also hired friends during this process. That's something I've done there too. Even though I use Macs, my text and my Slacks right next to each other, trying to delineate. Let's avoid texting about work and keep it on Slack, just so there's that separation, even if it's a very thin line,
sure.
and finding a way to separate your personal life from work, and also hard feedback. So like giving coaching or something where I need you to do something different and I'm the business owner and you're an employee, even though in the real world we're sisters. Here's how I need you to take this feedback here and make sure it's delivered at work and not at family dinner.
Yeah,
So figuring that out. But for me, whenever we first started, we didn't live near each other. So right now she's right next to me and comes to work at my house throughout the week. But at first we were separate. So we worked remotely and it was like a nice connection point of being able to talk when we weren't in the same room or near each other all the time. But
yeah,
it's definitely just setting boundaries and making sure that there's clear ownership. She is an employee, I'm an owner. There isn't like shares or anything like that.
sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, just being super clear and figuring out your strengths and weaknesses.
Has it been also just like a positive, like
Yeah, I
really
love
cool thing to like work
yeah.
on together with,
Yeah, it's fortune.
someone you really love and build something really cool? I'd imagine it's also a really good time.
It's been so cool. And
Cool.
so we filmed the course, the integration course that Coastal created a few years ago at a beach house on my birthday at the 1 year anniversary of Coastal existing. And it was so cool. And I rented a beach house for the whole team. There were 6 of us at the time, and everyone's filmed in the course if you watched it. But we were just standing out on the balcony and like looking out at the ocean while we had the film crew inside and stuff going on. It's just like having that shared experience with your sister who had just had a baby at the time. So we're just having that moment of look how far we've come and that we're doing it together. It's been a really cool experience. Super grateful. Not that
I mean, this is the entire point. You had a job, you did a said job, you made one with your family.
Yeah.
Like, the end, the
Yeah.
textbook, the fairy tale. And I mean, HubSpot makes it possible to do such a thing because, again, it's the early days. There is
Yeah.
so much opportunity that you can kind of trip over it if you're looking in the right places, i.e., communities of people that are having challenges. And there you go. And one of those biggest tactics, once you go through this process of working, you start to fight over the imposter syndrome and realize that you are an expert in your field. And the kind of next step about that is content. So tell us about this content. Tell us about this community that you're building, because you're putting out a lot of stuff, and it's a huge like, all right, I'm going to film a video and do a beach house and double down on doing something and speaking through that. So talk about a little bit about
Yeah.
your courses and the community you're building.
So whenever I started Coastal Consulting, obviously I didn't have a business plan. I really had nothing. I had 2 grand and a lot of anger. So I was like, let's go make a company with that.
Sure.
Sometimes that's all you need, I guess. Right?
Yeah, that was a lot. You have to start off with a lot.
Yeah.
So I wanted to create a company, obviously, like I said earlier, for what I needed when I was younger. And I really needed some educational pieces. And when you're in the middle of the HubSpot-Salesforce ecosystem, you look to your left and you have Trailhead and Salesforce where you can read to your heart's desire all of their content. And then you can look at HubSpot Academy on your right and see all the videos about marketing and sales and HubSpot focused videos. And there is there is no bridge. So I was wondering, how can I get in the middle of this and create content for that person who lives in the middle? So I started with a blog. Religiously, I did a blog post every week. Now I'm not so good at that, but that's because we have hundreds and There's so much other stuff I'm doing, but
Yeah.
I started with a blog post
Fire
every
up the
week.
content assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried to outsource content at certain points and I just can't do it. Content is mine. It is what I want to own. It is me. And so it's really important to me to create our own educational content. But I created us as a people first learning organization. And so I really focus in on the content piece. Our content is written to be helpful. There is way more that I give away for free than most people would. Um, for years, I have given away the course for free, and I've decided to go ahead and revamp it and repackage it and start selling it. So later this month, there is something new coming to the market. One is the 2024 version of the HubSpot Salesforce integration course, which is going to have captions, which it should have had all along.
Let's go.
It's going to have updated screen recordings for HubSpot's new UI that they've released. So we've gone through and redone all the screen recordings that you couldn't quite patch together with the UI changes.
Mhm.
And then it's also coming with a whole new module. So it was 8 modules, 75 videos. It's now 9 modules and I think 80-ish videos. It's about 8 or 9 hours of content on the HubSpot Salesforce integration.
It's pretty good stuff.
From everything from what is revenue operations is where we start. And then we go into how do you design the integration? That's a new module. It's a strategic design that I put on the integration. It's my ideal way to implement it.
Mhm.
And then you move into prepping your data in Salesforce and actually clicking install and going through that process and then building automations and reports and so on and so forth. So it's an insanely valuable course. Over 1,000 people have taken it over the years. And so now that we've done that, I've gotten all the feedback and we're making it a paid offering because I want to go in on that content piece.
Yeah.
So I'm releasing it in a community play. And so
Yep.
we're using a platform where we're also going to have a forum where you can subscribe monthly to all of the HubSpot Salesforce content that's more technical, that goes deeper and allows you to ask me questions directly in a
Mhm.
community sense where you can get help one-on-one, just like the HubSpot forum, but you're getting that direct access to me. So maybe you don't need an agency, but you need the one thing fixed with the integration. I don't do hourly contracts, but on there we can have a conversation and we can solve that together.
Yeah.
We're going to have a spot to share your wins with the integration. So let's talk about how everyone reports on MQLs using the HubSpot Salesforce integration.
That's
Plenty
gonna
to
be
talk
wild.
about
Yep.
there. And then also take the course and comment and talk to other people who are in the course so we can grow and have that place together where people go when they're sitting in both camps and they can't find people like them on the HubSpot forum or in the Salesforce forum. They come to us and we're the band. So super excited for that.
Yeah. And so I mean, I think there's such a good lesson behind like all of this because, you know, one of the biggest battles that I remember constantly fighting when I would be trying to get someone to change their mind on how they looked at putting content out in the universe, right? Where, you know, a lot of people just couldn't wrap their head around the idea that you're taking this knowledge that you've garnered and built over the years and just putting it out there for free, right? Can you like talk a little bit about how that has had like just a positive impact on your business from an actual, you know, winning business because of it? And it's not
Numbers.
just giving away your knowledge. Like there's physics behind why putting your knowledge out there freely to everybody can have a monetary positive impact towards the business, right? It's not just kumbaya giving everything away for free, right? Can you talk about what you've kind of seen from that?
So when I first started, I read the Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan
Mhm.
whenever I was trying to figure out how to be a marketer. Because in the past, I've been very technical. I've been the person behind the scenes. And then when I started Coastal, I needed to be the person creating all the content and being on the front end. So I went to one of the experts and he said, if people are talking about it, you should too.
Yep.
So I put everything on my website and people talk a lot about how SEO is dead these days, but I think they're just doing it wrong
Yeah.
because if you're doing keyword stuffing or just talking about surface level articles or content, nobody cares. These
Yep.
AI searches want the full, deep, data rich answer. And so if your content is just high level, no, it's not performing. But if you search for anything around the HubSpot Salesforce integration, we're on the first page and we are
That's
right
sick.
below
Where you
HubSpot.
built it? Where you
That,
doing it? That's where you
that
built
is
the company on.
sick. Yeah. Yeah. Yo, so it's like even there from an SEO perspective, having the actually genuinely good content around there, right? It's one, it's like just getting eyeballs on you. Two, and I'm going to rant here for a second. It's like when you put this kind of content out there in the universe, there's really only two things that can happen for people that actually consume it, right? One, they go, they read it, they consume your content, it teaches them something, they go out and do it on their own. Or You teach them how to do it. They get the confidence to go out there and try it. They realize, man, this is really hard. Who better to hire me than the
My
person
teacher.
who clearly knows what they're talking about, right? And even those people that do go out and succeed with whatever that goal or challenge was that they had that you helped them get to, right? You've now created a promoter of your content, which is one of the most valuable things that you can have. So it's just, or I think this is a very roundabout way of me, saying how much I respect and love the amount of positive content and truly actually educational content like you put into this community around a subject that is very difficult for a lot of people to talk about, and also a very scary subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about, right?
Sure.
There's not a lot of people doing what you're doing at the level that you're doing it. So I think it's like you are adding a very special thing into this community about a really important subject. And I just wanted to make sure I had a platform to say that to you. Cool. So, Dax, sorry, did you look like you were
No,
about to?
no, this is all good. No, the biggest thing is, I'm so thankful for the time. Just like understanding creators, right? We are all creators.
Yeah.
It's almost our duty in this universe to create. And some of the stuff that we've created kind of worked a lot with the stuff that you created. That you're a big advocate for Associate. Shout out to Associate, ball cap game, strong. With the integration with Salesforce and HubSpot, because it doesn't bring the objects you want, doesn't associate the things you do. You might need to unassociate things. How's that been working for you? And kind of how is this a piece of your toolkit?
So it's funny, in 2024, I finally productized our services. Over the years, I've been doing a custom scope for everyone. That's exhausting. It takes a long time and I don't need to. So this year, I actually productized and said, if you give me these 2 data points and you fall in one of 3 categories, and in our top 2 categories, you get associate as part of your contract. So
Brilliant.
something where I cover for a month and I go in and actually clean up accounts. So you're actually in our contracts now.
Love
And
it.
the thing is, it's with the integration, it syncs over, and sometimes the associations don't match between HubSpot and Salesforce for whatever reason, especially if you're using a lead object in Salesforce. And with Associate for a couple $100 and our help, you can rematch all of your companies and delete thousands of duplicates in honestly 30 minutes. And it's insane. The amount of time that I used to spend doing this manually, it could take weeks, months even for some clients. And with no coding, nothing, and very affordable. I actually have a blog on how to do it if you want to do it without my help. It shows you step by step, but it takes no time at all. And it's a huge time saver. And it has a huge impact on customer experience because if you are pulling data on contacts from the wrong company, if you think about all the
Yeah.
data that you on the company or account objects, then you're just missing that.
Yeah.
The connections are lost. The message is off. It's so impactful.
Yeah.
Um,
And so you're doing a lot with Associate to match like account IDs that get synced over like with contacts, and when things get orphaned or records get orphaned because of like duplicate deletions and things like that, you're ensuring they get back to like who they should be associated to. Or I can't tell you how many partners I've sent that blog article to, because I get tons of questions around, hey, we're having this like kind of goofy stuff happening with, duplicates in Salesforce. And I go, have you read Lauren's article on how to use Associate to like literally solve this
pretty
problem?
much laid it out flat.
And they go, no. And I sent it to him and I don't even hear from him ever again. Like, seriously, it's been super helpful. So if anyone listening to this and you haven't checked it out yet and you're having issues with duplicates in HubSpot with Salesforce, and you're trying to figure out how to make sure everything gets associated back to the home that it needs to, go check out the article and we'll link in the show notes somewhere for it. But
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for
So,
that. Love
Lauren,
it.
you've been a blessing to come and talk about building with us. I love to ask some people a couple of fun questions. So my first question for you is favorite color.
my favorite what?
Color. What is your
Oh,
favorite?
navy blue.
I'll take it. I was asking for purple always. Your favorite Disney movie?
Frozen.
Oh, I'm having trauma responses to my children singing Let It Go literally all the time.
My 21st birthday party was Frozen themed. We did it like a children's party.
you're Korean.
There was goodie bags that were hangover kits. It was great.
Hangover
Oh,
Frozen,
that's
a
awesome.
Frozen hangover kit. So Coastal Consulting, cool, it's fine. If you get the hangover kit Disney style all day, like that's another one you can have running out of the garage. Last one is favorite country to visit.
Italy. We went recently and it was great.
Ooh. Best thing you ate when you were there?
Pasta of some kind.
Now
Oh, we
we-
made it pasta. The pasta we
Oh,
made.
sick. All right. There you go.
That's the world. Lauren, obviously it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the Build Happily podcast. Just speaking about how to build, and you get in a sentence to leave these other folks with that are trying to just get to that level, try to get started, what do you tell them?
Write every day, whether it's
Damn.
LinkedIn, blog, whatever, write every day.
She laid it out. Again, straightforward, right? So thanks again for coming on. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Lauren, so much. Really appreciate it. Cool.
I appreciate it.
Till the next one, Max.
To the next one.
Till the next one.